Exodus from Shanghai, from the communist inner circle to the kingdom of God. A communist becomes a Christian. By Frank Yang.
Narrated by Frank Yang.
The heart of man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. Proverbs 16:9. Each person, fleeting as a speck of dust, carries within them the vastness of a universe. Every life is a unique odyssey, every soul a vessel of profound faith. These words do not merely trace my journey, but testify to a story authored by the one true God, a narrative of Jesus Christ, infinitely greater than my own. What I chronicle here is the profound transformation of a Communist Party cadre, a man forged in an environment where God seemed absent, his beliefs shaped by the rigid doctrines of communist ideology. And yet, by the boundless grace of God, he was awakened. This is a story of redemption, of how, through divine providence, provision, and guidance, he was led out of the shadows of darkness into the radiant and liberating kingdom of Jesus Christ. Prelude. The oppressive summer heat clung heavily to the city, merging with its thick humidity and gloomy atmosphere. It felt suffocating, not just due to the weather, but because of the weight of a nation on the verge of collapse. You could feel it in the stillness. The night seemed to sweat with tension. I was squeezed into my tiny, suffocating room with 5 close friends and colleagues. We spoke in hushed, urgent tones, analyzing the political crisis that had been escalating for over a month. The whole country was on edge. Among us were friends whose parents had influential positions in the municipal government. Yet their privilege did not lessen their fear, but intensified it. We found ourselves in a heated debate about the future and Beijing's recent declaration of martial law.
The PLA won't open fire on students in Tiananmen Square,
one insisted.
It's unthinkable.
Old Deng is merely playing political chess, another added. He won't let things get out of hand. He's too clever.
You're both quite naive, I stated, my tone unwavering, the truth stinging. The communists have no option. They must suppress this uprising. It has already progressed too far. I paused for a moment. It will result in shooting. It is inevitable. A heavy silence fell over us. We weren't just debating politics. We were staring into an abyss, realizing that the outcome would irrevocably reshape China's future and ours. A deep sorrow gripped me as I understood a tragic fate was inevitable. This was no mere protest. It was a bold defiance of a regime that has relentlessly crushed dissent. History has taught us the endings of such struggles, but never on a scale this profound. The world was watching with bated breath. Tiananmen Square, once associated with peace, now faced potential violence and an uncertain future. We were no longer onlookers. The storm enveloped us. As the night wore on, the room steadily became emptier. One by one, my friends faded into the darkness, their footsteps silent in the stillness surrounding us. The streets were deserted. The air hung motionless as if the city was holding its breath. I went to bed at 12 p.m., but at 4 a.m. sleep was elusive. I quietly rose from bed. In the faint morning light, I glanced at my baby girl, Yunlu, then at my wife, Chuling, who slept peacefully beside her. I turned on the radio and tuned in to Voice of America. I needed to find out what was happening. The signal crackled. Then gunfire. Gunfire. Sharp. Relentless. The staccato of automatic weapons filled the room. I froze. Gunfire in Beijing. Gunfire in Tiananmen Square. The sound pierced through me. It wasn't a war, but it was war, not between nations, but between a government and its people. All of a sudden, it was happening. At that moment, everything I believed in shattered. The people's government, the people's army, the red flags I had saluted, the slogans I had memorized, and the loyalty I had been taught since childhood, all of it was collapsing under the weight of bullets. I stared at the radio, the chaos echoing in my bones. Everything was gone. Every ideal I had carried, every belief I had defended, every sacrifice I had made, they were all obliterated in that instant. Tears streamed down my face. I cried for the dead, for the living, for the people, for this country, for myself. Hewling stirred and sat up, rubbing her eyes. Her voice was calm and assured.
Has the shooting started?
I nodded. My voice cracked. I want to quit the party. I want to quit. She remained quiet.
Then,
She said,
I'll come see you in prison. I'll bring you something to eat.
I gazed at her in disbelief. Her words struck me, not with fear, but with a profound sadness for her. She grasped something that I hadn't fully confronted yet. This wasn't merely a political choice. This was suicidal. Yet she said nothing to stop me. But this was the moment of truth for me. Overwhelmed, I collapsed into her lap, weeping like a child. Hewling caressed my back softly, silently. We had been married for only 3 years. How could I involve her and our not-yet-2-year-old daughter in this turmoil? My heart quaked under the burden of it all. It was the most painful moment of my life. But how did we reach this pivotal moment in history that would profoundly change my life? When Deng Xiaoping rose to power, it seemed like a long-awaited spring had finally arrived. After 28 years of oppressive, authoritarian rule under Mao, the late 1970s and 1980s ushered in a political, economic, and ideological awakening. China, once languishing in a lengthy, repressive slumber, now stirred with hesitant optimism. Significant reforms flooded the nation like an unstoppable wave, transforming every aspect of society. The Cultural Revolution had concluded, and Mao's passing had created a power vacuum. However, beneath it all, the country was precariously close to economic collapse. The demands for intellectual freedom intensified, with voices calling for comprehensive political and economic reforms. For years, relentless propaganda ingrained communist principles into the populace ideas of collective ownership, equitable distribution, and a government that claimed to represent the people. Yet, as the reforms of the 1980s began to unfold, a troubling truth emerged. Corruption had seeped into the highest levels of authority. What was once a beacon of fairness and equality was now crumbling from within. Disillusionment rippled through the populace. Citizens became increasingly politically active, advocating for greater accountability and substantial reforms. However, with each call for change, the party's opposition grew stronger. Corruption was not just an internal issue. It starkly questioned the self-proclaimed moral superiority of the Communist Party as the sole governing body. When university students and ordinary citizens marched to Tiananmen Square to advocate for a brighter future, the regime opted for tanks and gunfire rather than dialogue or reform. For me, the Tiananmen Square massacre on June 4, 1989, symbolized more than just a tragedy. It became a defining moment that dismantled my beliefs and forced me to confront the unsettling contradictions in my life. For nearly a decade, I held one of the most coveted positions in China. This role granted me unique access to Shanghai's top leaders and the inner circles of national power. I was among the fortunate few who observed the party from within, gaining insight into its ambitions, weaknesses, and unspoken realities. Yet, my doubts intensified as the political landscape grew increasingly unstable each year. How can a noble vision be realized through some evil schemes? Is it right to gauge my success against the pain of my fellow countrymen? In the mid-1980s, these concerns seemed largely theoretical, a philosophical challenge rather than an immediate crisis. Yet, by 1987, my unease had transformed into a compelling urgency. I resolved to take an unprecedented action. I wrote a 10-page letter to Deng Xiaoping, the top leader of the Chinese Communist Party and the mastermind behind China's Reform and Opening initiative. Renowned for his practical approach and skill in managing political turmoil, Deng famously remarked, "It doesn't matter whether a cat is black or white, as long as it catches mice," and advocated for the concept of crossing the river by feeling the stones. Nonetheless, Deng's choice to oust General Secretary Hu Yaobang greatly unsettled me, despite his esteemed reputation for being pragmatic. Hu Yaobang was not just a notable official, he symbolized reform and embodied the aspirations of a generation. His ousting had already ignited dissatisfaction among students and intellectuals. I questioned Deng's decision to remove a leader so closely tied to his greatest achievement reforming China for a brighter future. I expressed deepening concerns about the party's shifting political landscape and whether China's reform ambitions were being undermined from within. At that time, I had no idea that my remarks and the following occurrences would spark a significant change in my own life. By 1989, Deng Xiaoping was not merely marginalizing reformists, but was also actively attempting to erase his own legacy. After placing Hu Yaobang under house arrest, he appointed Zhao Ziyang as general secretary to continue the reform agenda. But now, even Zhao had been thrown aside like a pawn when he expressed sympathy for the student protesters. Worse still, Deng had betrayed the principles he had championed throughout his rise to power. With a single, ruthless command, he ordered the People's Liberation Army to roll its tanks into the heart of the capital, to violently suppress unarmed students, to gun down innocent civilians, to stifle the generation that dared to envision a better future. A government that asserted it served the populace has now disclosed its greatest fear, the populace itself. A party that claimed to uphold universal truths has been unmasked as a regime founded on deceit and coercion. This was the harsh, inescapable truth I had to face. The following morning I entered the office of my direct superior, Director Hu.
Little Yang, is something bothering you?
Director Hu greeted me with his usual warm smile, his voice calm yet perceptive. He habitually maintained this demeanor steady, enigmatic, and truly skilled at navigating chaotic circumstances. I gulped nervously. "Director," I began, trying to be composed, "there's something on my mind. I'm finding it hard to reconcile my values as a party member with the current situation in Beijing. I am against the actions of the Central Committee. Therefore, I want to resign from the party." Silence. A deep, oppressive silence. Director Hu remained still. No hint of emotion flickered across his face. He simply sat there, staring, as if contemplating something invisible. Then, after what felt like forever, he slowly pushed back his chair and stood up. Without glancing at me, he walked over to the window away from his desk. With careful intent, he grasped the heavy curtains and drew them apart. Morning light streamed into the dim office, brightening the worn leather chairs and piles of government documents on his desk. It illuminated his face, yet his expression stayed inscrutable. Still facing the window, he finally spoke.
Little Yang, you're still young. Don't act rashly. Aren't you thinking of going abroad? I've seen you studying English. Once you leave China, leaving the party will come naturally.
I felt tense. What? Traveling abroad? It had never occurred to me. But why did Director Hu mention that? In my role in municipal government, The idea of leaving everything behind for a life abroad was unimaginable. My decision to resign from the party wasn't an escape. It was a stand, a protest against the government and the party's oppressive actions that affected us all. I started to voice my thoughts, but Director Hu turned to me, his gaze silencing me as if he could read my mind. He understood my turmoil, yet he was offering me a way out, a discreet escape, a chance to withdraw without leaving chaos in my wake.
Little Yang,
He stated calmly.
do you understand the seriousness of this? You are a valued party member in our municipal office. Resigning now would be like detonating an atomic bomb here, particularly given the current circumstances. How would Secretary Jiang explain this to Beijing? And you, what do you think will happen to you?
He took a step closer, lowering his voice.
I've always held you in high regard. You have a promising future ahead of you. Please, take a deep breath. Consider it carefully. For your own benefit, please refrain from discussing this with anyone else. Let's leave it at that, okay?
Director Hu navigated this moment with remarkable finesse, offering neither criticism nor praise, but unmistakably highlighting the seriousness of the situation. His exceptional ability to manage crises with poise and influence was a shocker to me. Despite our political differences, I never wished to cause him trouble. Director Hu treated me like a son for a decade, guiding, shielding, and aiding my career growth. How could I possibly be the source of his distress now? He held no guilt for the Tiananmen atrocities. His hands were free of blood. I could only nod, my mind in a state of chaos. I turned to exit. The door shut softly behind me. As I walked into the hallway, an unusual calm enveloped me. I had expected chaos, perhaps a swift arrest or confrontation, but instead, nothing happened. No sirens blared. No agents hid in the corridors. No nervous secretaries were avoiding my gaze. It felt as though nothing had taken place. However, beneath the surface, everything had changed. It resembled a bomb that had been thrown but never exploded, lying silently in an unsettling stillness. It could go off at any moment, yet no one acknowledged it. No one reacted, because no one had seen its launch. The situation felt unreal. Here I was, in the heart of the Communist Party's machinery, when a senior official, someone intricately woven into the system, casually suggested I defect. Why? Was this a silent agreement formed over a decade of collaboration? Did he genuinely want to help me escape? Or was he trying to shield himself from possible fallout? I frequently pondered this moment in the years to follow, striving to grasp its true meaning. What truly transpired in that room? At first glance, I had narrowly escaped disaster and impending catastrophe that would have seemed inevitable under any other conditions. My choices were reckless, even self-destructive, a challenge to a dominating regime, a clear invitation for ruin. Perhaps I acted out of desperation, a deep-seated urge to resist, to shout against an oppressive system. Maybe I yearned to ignite everything and become a tragic hero at that moment. Yet, everything vanished instantly like a whisper swept away by the wind, like a footprint vanishing into fog. No quiet hints of my impending ruin circulated through the hallways. It felt as if the universe had changed in a heartbeat, leaving me in an unsettling, unnatural stillness. This was the Communist Party, a vast machine of dominance and paranoia. The sheer improbability of what unfolded challenged every rule and logic I knew. On the morning of June 5, 1989, I found myself disoriented on the 8th floor of the Yangtze Hotel in Shanghai. the headquarters of the Hengshan Group Corporation. This state-operated firm functioned as a commercial entity, but it is an arm of the government. As office director, I oversaw the operation of this first government business hybrid in Shanghai. Additionally, I had direct links to Jiang Zemin, the mayor of Shanghai and the honorary chairman of the corporation, who was on the brink of becoming the country's president. I had just resolved to leave the Communist Party, an act of treason at the time, which would cut me off from the wealth, power, and prestige it offered. Yet Director Hu suggested that I go underground. At first, I believed his advice was merely a strategic effort to protect himself from the fallout of my defiance. However, I began to understand a deeper truth as the situation developed. It turns out, this astonishing act of mercy was not a mere coincidence. It was an act of divine intervention. Even our smallest thoughts and fleeting desires are part of God's eternal plan, especially regarding salvation. It felt like a seed nestled in the earth. A seed can grow into a tree, a wheat field, or a delicate flower. Its existence was never accidental. It was nurtured and awaited its destined moment. The soil itself was not random, and the sower, the one who planted it, didn't arrive by chance. Looking back now, I grasp this truth. History is not merely a sequence of arbitrary, meaningless incidents. It unfolds the emergence of a divine design. Who was I at my core? What journey brought me here? How did I become one of the inner circles of the Shanghai government elites, alongside those who would eventually direct the nation's future? And why did I relinquish it all without a fight when countless others have struggled fiercely for this very power? To comprehend this, we must travel back in time, back to the very beginning.